Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 129. It is Mark and Dave from Tone Talk, and we've got Nick Bowcott from Sweetwater, Grim Reaper, and a whole bunch of other stuff that we'll get into tonight. So, Nick, how are you?
I'm well, thanks for having me, gentlemen. It's a privilege and an honor to be speaking to you fine fellas,
Oh, same
especially
here.
as Dave is feasting on a White Castle as we speak.
I know. I wish I had a White Castle.
Well,
my stomach probably doesn't, but that's
Yeah.
okay.
yeah. If you have stomach problems, it's probably not a good thing.
Oh
to
man,
have.
yeah, White
And
Castle.
I'm remote tonight, so forgive if there's audio or some weirdness with my internet connection. I'm remote from Las Vegas,
Sin City.
Vegas.
from the Resorts World Casino.
What is it
Nice.
called?
Resorts World.
Oh, never heard
Or
of it.
Resort World. That's the new one.
Okay, was that the one that used to be the Hooters that you were telling me about?
No. This is way at the other end of the strip. It's a brand new, crazy, beautiful casino hotel.
Oh, okay.
Pretty posh and nice.
Which end? Like the end by the Wynn?
Madison end. It's across from the old Sahara.
Oh wow, okay.
You're familiar.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, Nick
It's
and I
the
were
latest.
talking.
I think it was the last one built. It was built in 2021.
Oh, really? That recent? Wow.
That
It
is
opened
recent.
in 2021. Yeah, pretty sure. So,
Cool. It's been a while since I've been. So, but yeah, it's kind of far for you too, Nick. I was going to say it's far for me to go. So
Yeah, it is. It's not exactly. When I lived in Phoenix, it was a drive, a good drive, a fun drive. Traffic in Vegas, well, didn't used to be bad like 10 years ago. I'm not sure what it's like now, but yeah, it was a fun trip.
yeah, I can imagine driving there. It'd be cool. How long you been living in Fort Wayne? Because you live by Sweetwater, right?
Yeah. The joke here is everything's 15 minutes away from everything else. So I'm literally 15 minutes from Sweetwater. I've been here about 6.5 years already. Like time flies. It's scary.
And where were you living before? Were you in the States or in America or?
Yeah, I was in Phoenix. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Phoenix, Arizona.
You just said that. So sorry.
that is a big climate change.
Yeah, it's a huge climate change. Well, you know what? I lived in Phoenix for about 7 years. My family's still out there because of education and COVID and all that wonderful stuff, malarkey. But I loved Phoenix initially, but it's kind of the Truman Show. Like the summer's really hot, then the winter's beautiful, but the winter becomes, you get so used to 75 degrees, no humidity, and a blue sky, you actually stop appreciating it. I didn't realize how much I missed the seasons. So
yeah.
I kind of like it here, although in a couple of weeks I'll probably think, why did I come here? Because it will start snowing. But it's all good.
Yeah. Well, I live in South Florida, so I kind of know what you're talking about.
Right.
There's hardly any seasons at all. So
we have 2 seasons in California. It's hot
and really hot.
Or no. Hot or there's only 2 seasons. It's hot or it's relatively cool, meaning 70 degrees.
Right. Yeah, Phoenix is kind of the same. It's pizza oven hot during the summer and then relatively cool. Actually, like the winter months, like the 4 or 5 months of winter is gorgeous. I can see why a lot of people the snowbirds go there.
Yeah, I can.
And then it might rain. Oh, I don't know. These days, like 10 days a year.
Right.
Isn't that crazy? That's why there's water shortages and that, I can imagine.
Yeah.
So I hope everybody had a good week and a good Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody, or late Thanksgiving. I just had seconds or I guess what do they call that? Leftovers.
Yeah, leftovers.
Yeah.
Next week.
Yeah. Well, we didn't have much. People clean us out. We had a lot of family over, so most of the food's gone, which is good.
Man, I was so happy not to do any of that stuff.
Oh
yeah. I was talking to Michael Nielsen about that because he was like, "Yeah, it'll be great to be at home." I'm like, "Yeah, but then when you have people over, then you have to clean up after everything and prepare and all that crap." So
absolutely.
It's good just to go to.
It was
someone's
really
house.
nice not to have to do any of that. It was cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I spent mine yesterday doing some recording in the studio, and the guy who runs the studio is a really good cook. He's kind of like a wannabe Dave Grohl. He's got the smoker, and his barbecue setup's worth more than most people's vehicles. So I had fun recording, and I ate well, and I didn't have to do a damn thing apart from tune some guitars and play as best I can. So that was a fun one. No prep for me, just driving about 40 minutes. So that was a win.
That's cool.
There
Yeah.
you go.
It was smoked turkey?
It was actually like he actually did prime rib.
Oh, that's even better.
Oh,
Yeah.
it was gorgeous. It had been marinated for like 7 days. So it was,
Wow.
yeah. You kind of looked at it, and it would melt. It was great.
Perfect.
That's great.
Fantastic.
I can go for that right now. So yeah, I'm really glad to have you on, Nick. We have such a great partnership with Sweetwater, and they've been such a great just great, I guess, just support of the show. They've been really supporting our show, and which is great, and we love it. So how did you start working for them?
Kind of make a long story not too long. I came here for many, 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 many years as the Marshall guy. Like, I would come here and train. In fact, the first time I trained, they were still in their old facility, which is now a church, believe it or not. And I got on really well with Chuck and his hierarchy. Really nice, driven, passionate people. And the thing that intrigued me about Sweetwater was not only the growth, but the the level of knowledge they had here. Like, without being disrespectful to other people selling stuff in the States, in a lot of cases when I trained for Marshall, I had to kind of dumb it down, which is no one's fault. But at Sweetwater, I had to raise my game because these people know what the hell they're talking about. What a concept. So they ask intelligent questions.
Right.
And they continue to. So I really enjoyed it. And I was just fascinated by the culture because everyone seemed upbeat. They actually seemed glad to be working at Sweetwater. They all had a passion for what they do, as you guys do. What a concept. And, life is short, man. So, I can't say I've made a lot of money in my career, be it, on this side of the fence, the other side of the fence, or as a journalist. In fact, I would say the people at the bank recognize me because they just point and laugh, which I guess is not a good sign. But ignoring that, it's like, to me, life is really short. And if you're going to spend most of your life working, if you don't like what you do, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how much money you earn. And maybe that's me rationalizing my lack of funds. But I've had a really good. I've enjoyed my life as a professional, whatever the hell I am.
Yeah, I mean,
what is officially your role there?
Officially, I'm what they call. I don't like the term too much. Content creator.
Aha. Yeah.
So I just think I make videos and write articles that hopefully interest people with similar interests to me. So, and sort of like my journalism and my music career, cough cough, it's always a very selfish endeavor because I do what I think is good, and I hope other people like it. But if I don't like it, I won't do it. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Totally.
Because once again, like, you're only as good as your last video, or you're only as good as your last amplifier, or your last show, which in this case might be a bad sign for you guys because you've got.
Yeah.
It's
over. It's all over now.
Yeah, it's done. Sorry, guys. Episode 129, the last one. It was a good run, though. 129, pretty impressive.
That's fun.
That's good.
But so I just kind of, I feel very fortunate to have I think that was probably your next White Castle delivery. I feel very fortunate to have managed to pay my bills via playing guitar as best I can. And interviewing people I enjoy interviewing because of what they make, be it music or be it actual music or the creating the tools that allow people to make music like Dave does here. You know, great. You make fantastic musical tools, my friend. Not being obsequious, just fact.
That's great. Yeah.
Like I always enjoy reviewing a Friedman amp because you know it's going to be good. No pressure, Dave, on your next project. But, yeah.
I can't make something bad. I couldn't live with myself.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same. It's like people go, "Why are you pushing yourself?" It's like because good enough doesn't exist in my vocabulary. When it comes to something I do, I want to give it my best shot at that time. You know, you can obviously spend forever trying to perfect something and end up doing nothing because it'll be better the next day. So there has to be a cutoff point. But I always like to at least go, yeah, that was the best I could have done then. Could I do it better next week or next year? Hopefully, but that's just progress, I guess.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Allegedly.
Now, before you were working for Sweetwater, what were you doing?
I worked for Marshall for many moons, as I think Dave knows. I worked for Marshall for some 20 years, and I had a very good relationship with the late great Mr. Jim Marshall. He was, for some reason, maybe a lack of judgment on his part, he really liked me, so kind of took me under his wing. And I had the honor of eating countless dinners with him, you know, in England and in America. And people would say, aren't you tired of the same stories? Because it wasn't Jim telling the same stories, but I'm sure Dave has the same thing. Whereas once you become established as being successful, like the same questions invariably always crop up. And with Jim, they always wanted to know about the Pete Townsend connection, the Jimi Hendrix connection, yada, yada, yada. And it's like, how can I get bored of hearing that story? That's like saying I'm bored of watching Eddie Van Halen play Eruption.
Right.
Yeah, it's like rock royalty.
It's like part of the musical foundation, which is why we do what we do. And Jim was part of that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I did that for many moons. I had a short but wonderful tenure at Fender. I had the honor of working with the late great Edward Van Halen on the Wolfgang launch. And
oh, did you?
Yeah, what a remarkable human being he was. Like those ears, just ridiculous. Like he could hear things I think no other human could hear, and the way he played was just ridiculous. And a thoroughly nice human being too. I was actually told by some people in the industry, you know what, Ed's hard to work with. It's like, and I have to, with the greatest respect to those folk who told me that, you're totally wrong. He had high expectations, as did Jim Marshall, because it's his goddamn name on the product. It's the same as Dave's company. It says Friedman.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's his name. It's his legacy. So was he demanding? No, he just wanted you to do as well as you could because it was his name.
Yes, so and he also always, you never told him what he needed. You let him tell you what he wanted.
Yes.
That was a very important lesson to be learned.
I agree. And some people didn't get that. They felt that, I think I know what Ed wants. It's like, he's Edward Van Halen. What part of that don't you get?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, he'll tell you.
Yeah. He changed the game, and people are still, the quote unquote brand sound is still highly revered and always will be, and in my humble opinion, quite rightfully so.
Mm-hmm.
So what exactly did you do when you were working for Fender with the Wolfgang?
It was just liaise, like making sure the launch was sort of all it should be, basically. So working with Ed on the marketing, he was very particular on how things are worded, what images are used, yada yada. Because I basically went in as artist relations / marketing / product development. I didn't do anything on the production, on product development side with Edward. Or the highway, and rightfully so. Once, it's going back to like Dave and his brand or Jim and his brand. If it's got the person's name on it, they call the shots.
Right.
I was involved with Jackson, Charvel, EVH, a lot of art stuff, and it was a wonderful time. But then Marshall asked me to go back. Like, they changed American distributors, and I'd always promised myself, assuming that I would outlive Jim, that I'd like to be his guy in the States if and when he passed. And I took that opportunity, and I'm glad I did, because I got to spend some quality time with the man before he shifted off this mortal coil.
So what were you doing when you were working for Marshall?
Artist relations, a lot of marketing stuff, a lot of training stuff. I was involved with the voicing. As a guitar player, I'd go over there. I was part of an international group of people that would go over, and I would basically tell them what I felt my market research dictated the American marketplace wanted. And what's good, what's bad, what would work over here, what wouldn't. And most of I'm sorry?
Did they listen?
Yeah, absolutely they did, yeah. More fool them. No, but no, I mean, like, a lot of my stuff was based on, Jim had this really good philosophy with regards. There were a couple of things he told me that really stuck with me. And one was, never, the day you assume you know everything, you are of no use to me, because it means you're arrogant and you think you're holier than thou. And the other thing he said is, you need to listen to everybody and anybody. He said some of my most valuable lessons on production and in terms of tone have come from a 16-year-old apprentice who looks at the same thing I've been looking at for years and sees it differently. So he was, you've got to keep your ears open, your eyes open, and you've got to listen to what your end consumer wants, because you're only as good as, if you make something you think is good and no one else thinks it's good, it doesn't matter how good it is. If you're the only customer for it, well done, you've made yourself your perfect amp. But if no one else wants it, you're going to yeah. So those were two valuable lessons, and the art of listening and always assuming you know nothing, because I'll tell you, the more I'm in this industry, the more I realize I don't know very much at all, which is great, because it means there's more to learn.
Yeah, exactly. I still haven't tackled MIDI yet, so I mean, look, I might wait till I'm 60, maybe 70.
Yeah. At this point, MIDI is kind of an antiquated thing too.
I know.
Eventually, they're going to update this and make
it MIDI 2.0. They say, right?
Yeah.
What was the old M1D one they used to call it. What's this M1D one crap?
Exactly.
That's funny. So I gather you worked with Santiago Alvarez.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
He's been on our show.
Yeah, talented guy, man.
Yep.
Talented guy.
He's worked for Marshall on and off and on and off and on and off.
Yeah, it's a shame. I really wish he was there, because his, like, the JVM was his, the Satriani was his, the Kerry King was at the helm of that, all the Slash stuff. Like, a talented guy.
Yeah. Some of their better high gain amps.
Yes. Yeah, like the JVM still stands the test of time, and it's been a long time now.
Does that amp? I don't know if you know how stuff sells at Sweetwater, but does that amp still sell pretty well at JVM?
Yeah, as well as you know what? I'll be honest with you. I couldn't give you facts or figures with regards where it sits in the hierarchy of the high gain stuff, and maybe I should. But yeah, like, it's still cool. Like, it's still part of the fabric.
Yeah.
Sure.
I imagine. Yeah. So let's go way back. So you played in the band Grim Reaper.
I was actually guilty of forming the band, actually.
Yeah, you formed it.
Yeah, guilty as charged. Formed the band, wrote the riffs, and have a level of celebrity thanks to Beavis and Butthead thinking we sucked, which still is a badge of honor to me, to be honest with you. But
now, I knew about Winger, but I didn't know that they had a thing with Grim Reaper. I
Well,
must have missed it.
I can give you the story behind that's kind of interesting. My old management, Concrete, went on to manage Pantera and White Zombie, amongst other people. And I think back in the day, White Zombie were the first band, or one of the first bands that Beavis and Butthead actually liked. And I was having a conversation. I just helped Jay Younger from the band with some Marshall stuff. And I was talking to Walter, and the first album had just gone gold. I said, hey, do me a favor, when you see Rob and Jay, tell them congratulations, and tell them I know it's got nothing to do with the fact that two cartoon characters liked them, even though that was good for them. It went gold because it's a great record. And Walter, the manager, said, well, you know what? He goes, I've become friends with Mike Judge. Would you like me to send him See You in Hell? I went, yeah, I'd love to, because they'll hate it. They'll trash it. I had a bullet belt armband, for goodness sake. It was very that. So literally 3 days after that, so Walter said, yeah, I'll definitely do that. And about 3 days later, a friend of mine from New York, and I was working for a company called Korg with a Marshall distributor, who were on Long Island, which is about 25 miles, on the Long Island away from Manhattan. And a friend of mine from Manhattan called me up and said, hey, I saw you last night. I went, I wasn't in Manhattan and I wasn't out. Where did you see me? He goes, oh, you're on Beavis and Butthead. And I was like, that's really quick. So I watched for a week, and sure enough, See You in Hell was on Beavis and Butthead, and sure enough, it got trashed. I think we won the pink ribbon at the pig contest at the local fair or something like that. That was the crack at the time. So I called up Walter and went, hey, man, that was really quick. He says, what are you talking about? I said, well, See You in Hell's on Beavis and Butthead. He goes, I don't see Mike until next week when he comes in to the Rob Zombie show, to the White Zombie show. Are you coming? I said, yeah, of course I am. He goes, well, let's hook up. So I was at the White Zombie show, and Walter walks up to me and says, hey, do you want to have some fun? I said, sure. He goes, Mike's here. Mike Judge is here. He goes, just F with him. F with him big time. So Mike's a fairly short guy, looks a little bit like an accountant, and he sees Walter come, Walter was, hey, Mike, and he comes bounding over. He goes, Walter says, so how's it going, Mike? He goes, it's amazing. He goes, I've never been backstage at a show before, and everyone has been really nice, and Rob and the guys are being so gracious. And Walter said, well, I've got some bad news for you. That's probably about to change, because this gentleman here got an informed Grim Reaper. He wrote See You in Hell. And I looked at him and just went, and I used all the words you can't use, all the politically incorrect words.
You can curse on here, if you'd like, but
yeah, the F word, the C word. Yeah. And I was giving him hell, going, you effing piece of blah, 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 you blah, 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 blah. And after about 10 seconds, I started laughing, because in my peripheral vision, I could see Walter losing it. So I started laughing, and Judge went, you're kidding? I said, dude. So I love the show, and if you'd have liked Grim Reaper, I'd have lost all respect for you and your cartoon characters, because, dude, it was 1984. I had the bullet belt wristband, a white leather jacket with studs all over it. I said, in 10 years' time, people will probably think 30-year-old guys wearing Doc Martens, flannel shirts, and shorts will be funny too. I accept it. I love the song. I've got great words from people about the fact they see it again. But no, I don't hold any grudge at all. In fact, if you thought that video was stupid, the next one had an amphibious landing craft in it. But he was like, long story short, I said, you know what, well, I'll send you the whole lot. And so he actually went on to talk about our conversation on David Letterman, and he got me in Playboy for the second time. Because
really?
He talked about it in the Playboy interview. They said, what's the reaction from artists? And he said, well, most of them hate me, but there was this guy called Nick in a band called Grim Reaper who actually said he'd have lost all respect if we'd have liked the video. And the funny thing is, so I said to Mike, I said, what's the worst reaction? What's the worst kickback you've ever got? And he said, oh, it was Kip Ringer. Because what happened is, you probably remember back in the day, Kip was a VJ, a very successful VJ for MTV. And he was in LA. He was on one side of the coast, and he saw Beavis and Butthead crush 17. Yeah. And it was one of their brutal, brilliant one-liners, like, these guys are on the edge. Yeah, the edge of Wussville. and Kip lost it and apparently called the CEO of MTV and woke him up going, "This is bullshit. I'm a VJ. You get cancel this stuff." Maybe Kip started cancel culture. I don't know. He's going, "You can't do this. This is BS, blah, 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 blah." And I said to Mike, "So what was your reaction?" He said, "Well, if you look at the timeline, Stuart, the character that was disliked by Beavis and Butthead, the wimpy kid, he goes, if you look back around that time he had a black shirt, after that phone call, his shirt had Winger on it from now to eternity." So the moral of the story is don't mess with cartoon characters because they'll make what they've made bad even worse for you by putting your logo on a shirt. And the reason I said the second time we're in Playboy, because the See You in Hell actually got reviewed by Playboy. And it was the shortest review I've ever seen. It was almost like Shark Sandwich.
I was gonna say, is it like shit sandwich?
Yeah, shit sandwich. They didn't say that. But they used 2 words. It just said, "Not recommended." That was the review. Which is freaking great. I love that stuff. So
that's great. You have a good sense of humor about it.
all press is good press. Like we got, when we emerged, we were like, a writer for Cream voted us one of the top 10 worst bands of the last decade, and we did it in 3 months. As far as America were concerned. So we were so happy about it. We sent her 13 black roses as a thank you. Which you should not. Our best review was this guy wrote it, and I kept it, and I admire the old critics more than I do trolls, because at least you knew who they were. They weren't using a pseudonym.
True.
It was Mr. X. I can't remember the guy's name, but it was one of the funniest. I've quoted it in biographies. He said, "Listening to this record is about as pleasurable as giving yourself a frontal lobotomy with a blunt butter knife." and then finished the review and said, "By the time this record was done, my dog had died of rectal cancer." And so it's like, once again, thank you. All press is good press. It's funny. I remember it for that reason. It's so stupid. It's funny.
That's just memorable.
Yeah, trolling, but without an alias.
Right.
Wow.
So all good.
We've got some questions for you. What is life like outside of Sweetwater and Fort Wayne? Worth moving to?
The people here are really nice. There are a lot of, unfortunately, COVID's put us all in a bubble for the best part of 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of bands come through here. I've played more since moving here than I did in Phoenix, to be honest with you. I've had the good fortune of, I've played with Fozzy twice as a guest, Warrant 3 times as a guest. And the highlight for me, probably with the greatest respect to Fozzy and Warrant, was I got to play with Lita Ford, which was, that was a bucket list tick that wasn't even on my bucket list.
That's cool. Yeah, she's in my eyes, she's a guitar legend. I mean,
she walks her talk. I really like Lita.
I mean, she doesn't have a lot of hits music, but when you think about it, she was the guitar player in the Runaways. So that to me is just like she should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame just for that,
Yeah, and she also, she had a top 10 single with Ozzy Osbourne.
Yeah,
that doesn't suck.
No, and she's also easy on the eyes, so there's nothing wrong with that too.
And she's a thoroughly nice human being as well. So.
Yeah, and she can rip on the guitar too.
No, she's scary. She can sing.
She's talented.
She can sing her ass off still. She's no spring chicken, but she looks like a spring chicken.
Yeah.
Still.
Dan Pfeiffer says, I remember Nick from his days at Marshall and Guitar Mag articles. Cool.
Right.
We've got some. By the way, I went to, like I was telling you earlier, I went to the Sweetwater GearFest at Fort Wayne. Dave, you and I went out to a great steak place there. So. Oh,
was it the Cork and Cleaver?
No. Well, maybe. Wait a minute. I've been there so many times. So for me, there's Club Soda, there's Don Hall's Gas House, there's the Cork and Cleaver, and Baker's. That's where it was.
Okay,
it was Baker's. Yeah.
There's some good restaurants. There's a Ruth Chris here as well now. If you're into
there was a good barbecue joint there too. I liked.
Yeah.
Lucille or something.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, Lucille's
That place is
barbecue.
great.
Yeah. Yeah, no, the food here is good. I really like the people here. Like the music scene, obviously, is pretty healthy because of Sweetwater.
Mhm.
Right.
Like Sweetwater's got a lot of musicians here, and there's the Clyde Theatre, which is really good. There's the legendary Pierre's, and the nice thing about Fort Wayne too is it's not that far from Indy, and it's maybe 3.5, 4 hours to Detroit, and the same to Chicago. So we're kind of slap bang in the middle of stuff. So I've seen a lot of shows, not all in Fort Wayne, but there's also a Fort Wayne Coliseum where the likes of Megadeth have just been through, Five Finger Death Punch, yada yada. So yeah,
But like 3 hours from Detroit, where almost everything comes through.
exactly, yeah. And the nice thing is now we've got a venue like the Clyde, which is is very much funded by Sweetwater. It's become a venue that acts for a certain level. It's sort of far enough from Detroit and Chicago that they can like make it as a stop.
Yeah, you do shows at that pavilion, don't you? At your
Yeah. We have a pavilion outside now, which is where GearFest was being held. I think when you guys would have come out, yeah, I think the biggest name we've had here would probably some guy with a top hat called Slash,
right.
who did quite well. Yeah, like so we've like this year we had like Blackberry Smoke came through. Then it wasn't REO, Styx came through.
They're still great. Styx is still great.
Styx, REO, Peter Fram, all there's a whole like sort of, what would you call it? Like 3,000 to 5,000 seat arena. Well, I guess I'm spacing out what the venue's called, but people like Styx and REO, they can just tour, like they're touring harder than most big acts.
Right.
And selling a lot of tickets,
Yeah, definitely. I saw at that pavilion, I missed Steve Vai.
Right.
But that was the night before. But I saw Eric Johnson there, which was great. He was fantastic.
Yeah, the last one we had, Mr. Malmsteen played.
Oh, I just saw him. I just saw him play in Miami.
Man. I sure hope you guys do GearFest again.
Yeah, I do too, just because
in the proper form.
Yeah, like the amount of people that talk about it with fondness and also do it again, please, is
it was fun. It was a lot of fun, but like we were saying, if it gets overcrowded, that could be a problem.
Yeah, I think the main concern here would be, especially after a 2-year lull, because I think the last one, I was talking to Mark about this earlier today when we did a test of this setup, was I think the last one over the 2 days was nearly 18,000 people.
Yeah,
and that was pretty much near the cap.
Yeah, it was crowded.
Yeah, so it's if it goes to 25 or 30, there's going to be a big problem. Yeah, and that's kind of a concern, obviously.
Yeah. Jerry C. Hey Nick, greetings from Muncie. Really love the Reaper guitar work, brother. Totally kicked ass.
Oh, well, thank you. Muncie's not that far from here.
Oh, that's cool. Let's see. Zach Lee, Nick Bowcott, your instructional content with Sweetwater for the song Crazy Train main riff. You use alternate picking. Why do you prefer to alternate pick instead of just down pick?
The answer is I don't, but that was a beginner lesson. So I wasn't going to say, play this at speed using downstrokes only. That might have, there's that fine line between clever and stupid, and sometimes I cross it the right way, sometimes I cross it the wrong. When I play Crazy Train live, I normally do it downstrokes only, but that's getting up there. It's not Master of Puppets, but like the instructional stuff I do is for sort of sort of intermediate and behind, and beginner to intermediate. So
right,
I don't want to put people off. If you can down pick it, it sounds great. Although alternate picking, like single notes, if you've got a good upstroke, I had the conversation with Richie Faulkner about it. There are certain things where you need the downstroke, like on Master of Puppets with the chords. But if you look at someone like a Dimebag Darrell, his upstroke was incredibly powerful. In fact, it was a big part of his playing technique. And the same is true of Megadeth. I saw something recently with Kiko and Rick Beato, and he was talking about the fact that, yeah, it's not all down picks. Sometimes alternate picking is preferred because of the attack you can get and also the cadence. It's not just da 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 da, but it gives you a groove sometimes.
Yeah. And sometimes you can just, at least for me, even though like if I'm going for some like a knowing it's downstrokes, and then I'll just do it alternate picking, and then I'll be like, oh shit, I need to do that downstroke again,
Right,
and the next time I'll be like, okay, downstrokes on that one, but the one before it was alternate picking. You just kind of sometimes switch off. But we got Sean Rona. It says, Nick, can you please give a shout out? Sorry. Can you give a shout out to my girlfriend, Tamaris? She's a big fan of Grim Reaper from Brazil. Tamaris,
thank you. And yeah, what can I say but thank you?
Thanks, Tamaris.
And
Thanks,
hopefully you'll feel better soon.
That's funny. Equinox, thank you. Nick, when you guys did the Marshall 1959 Randy Rhoads demo, I could not get the same tone even with the same setup and power break. Did you guys use an overdrive or boost?
I'm assuming he's talking about at the launch at NAMM. No, it was I used EMGs. I had EMGs in my Rhodes, but I didn't. Like Randy's tone was a modified. It was actually an MXR Distortion Plus, but I know from the guitar player in Budgie who was friends with John Tom. His name was John Thomas. He toured with Randy on that very first tour. He informed me that when Randy's pedal board broke down, they tried to make a replacement for it, and the MXR Distortion off the shelf didn't sound like the one in his unit, so they took it apart, and it had been set in epoxy resin for some reason. So who knows if it was modified or not? But yeah, Randy's tone was an MXR Distortion Plus on a lot of the time, plus the graphic EQ, if memory serves me correctly.
Yeah, 10-band MXR graphic.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah.
And cabinets with Altec speakers.
Yeah, well said, that man. Yeah, because a lot of people overlook the importance of a speaker. That's like that's where the rubber meets the road. That's the end of the chain.
Yeah,
right? And
it's a big difference.
Oh, it's a huge difference.
What is that? What are those? I've never played through those speakers. What do they do? Are they like very bright? Tend to be bright, or?
I'll be honest, I've never played through them. I just know. Well, the reason people can't. I would say that the reason people can't duplicate Randy's sound is, number one, the only person who really could was him. But yeah, to not have those speakers would make it even harder. I'm sure he would sound different through, say, vintage 30s or a greenback than he would through those speakers. So
interesting. Okay, that's cool. Let's see. Let's make sure I get to any other questions. Here we go. Dave, any recommendations on where to get my Celestion blackbacks reconed, preferably in Detroit area?
I don't have any recommendation for any recone people anymore. That's a good question. I know there's some people that do it in Detroit. There might be someone at Berkeley Music that does speaker reconing. You might want to try to check with Bruce Egnator. He might know someone in Detroit that does it. I think someone at Berkeley Music does it. I mean, you might want to check with a couple other stores around and stuff. They might know. I'm sure there is someone there. I mean, you'd be reconing it with a Celestion, 25 watt kit. That's
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's better than nothing, though.
Yep.
Yes, better than throwing them away. So let me ask you a question, because Dave, I mean, clearly you can speak to this as a manufacturer, a brand. How is it with Sweetwater, and their relationship? with Friedman and Nick. How do you like? What's your perception of how Sweetwater works with different brands and things?
Well,
I'll let Dave answer first.
Well, first of all, like Nick said, it's like people are educated there. I mean, the sales people go through a program, and not all of them make it.
No, so it's a very
advantage. They tend to have some technical background or training, at least how to troubleshoot some things and things like that with some of their customers. They also generally know something about the product, or they try to at least. But it's really the customer service. It's you can get a hold of your sales rep, and if you have a problem with something, they take care of it right away. They'll swap an item for you if it's defective or something, and it's just a real full-fledged service. And it's mostly free shipping on most stuff, maybe not everything, and they carry just like everything pretty much, and you can get it really fast. And, it's just like it doesn't exist. I mean, it's packed properly when it comes. It comes in the original box. Often other large retailers might toss an amp in a box with a little bit of paper and hope it makes it there. We've seen that many times. It's a little disturbing, actually. You're never going to get that stuff from Sweetwater. It's just going to be pure business, and it's going to be great,
Yeah. What about working with them as a manufacturer, though? Like,
Well, that's what I'm sort of talking about. I mean, that they working with them as a manufacturer. Well, they support your product. They do videos and different things like that. But the thing is they're on the first line giving customer service to the customers.
Right. So I see what you're saying. They're answering questions. They're telling people about the product on the phone every day.
Yeah, sure. They're trying. Yeah. Well, yeah, sure. They're going to, they're smart about it. I mean, like, if you're a salesman and your clients and, you have a relationship that you've created with certain clients, that, hey, Joe, whoever, he buys a lot of high-end amps and he generally really loves them. And to call him and go, hey, this new thing's coming out and you might want to think about it. You just know if you're a good salesman, and the ones that are good at Sweetwater do quite well, and they juggle a lot of plates at one time, and they do things like that. They know their clientele, and they can really target. And also, I mean, Sweetwater also has a crazy amount of information that they've accumulated over time. Sales, histories, who is buying what in what category, what stuff is selling, what stuff isn't selling. It's a massive, like, the tracking of stuff there is crazy.
Yeah, to jump in on what Dave said, one of the cool things, like Sweetwater, I actually asked for a job here. I didn't apply for a job. I asked, could you create a spot for me? And Chuck Sirac asked me why I was asking that. And I said, well, you should know it's 5 words. And he went, what's that? I said, it's your company credo. Always do the right thing. And that's from the top down. And one of the reasons I like working here so much, I enjoy working here, is there's there's a positive attitude. People are genuinely happy to work here, but they realize that that everything that we do is dependent on customer satisfaction. And to that end, not only do we try and know what we're talking about to the nth degree, but I've often turned people onto the, I'll have artists call me up and I'll set them up with someone, and they'll come up and say, hey, thank you. By the way, they actually talked me down to to something that didn't cost as much, because when I told them what I was going to use it for, they said, well, you can get this, but if you're not going to use A, B, C, D, and E of this particular product, be it software or whatever, this will do. that response, because that's not your normal salesperson MO. But, Sweetwater smart enough to realize that if you do the right thing and create a relationship of trust and get to know your customer, you'll actually have a customer for life, as to someone that you've went, yeah, I think you should get this, upsell them to something, and then have them be pissed off for 3 or 4 years afterwards because they bought something that was above what they needed, and the sales guy didn't tell them that. And I know there are certain retailers out there that do that all the time, and I understand it from a commission point of view, but in terms of a relationship point of view, that's counterproductive, in my opinion. Like, you want to create, the great thing about what we do is people are obsessed with tone. It's probably the healthiest addiction out there, and guitar players have it worse than I think anybody else on the planet. And so if we put them right, if we do right by them, we will have a good chance of having a customer, just not for 1 or 2 sales, but from 10 years from now, as they're playing, they will be with us. And that's why, companies like Marshall, Friedman, Fender, Gibson will always be around, because people are looking for stuff that's great.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah. I mean, Sweetwater is just, really a fantastically run company. It just seems like a well-oiled machine on almost every aspect, from the sales department to the shipping department. Everything is just like, really, really, really good. And like you said, you talk to somebody on the phone, they'll give you good advice. They'll tell you what you need, what you don't need. So it's a great establishment.
We actually have sorry, I didn't mean to step on you there. Like, we actually have a department which will answer any consumer problem, because it's really hard, by human beings answer it, not some, please tell us what your problem is and we will try and guide you. 20 minutes later, you still haven't spoke to a human being. I hate those companies. That's customer disservice, in my opinion. But we actually have people whose full-time job it is to answer the phone and help people, because they can't get it for a lot of the time from the manufacturer. And that's part of the always do the right thing culture.
And that's a huge selling feature, because, I mean, not many other places offer that type of service. I remember when I bought the Helix effects, the
Right.
HX effects, and I was having, I forget, there was some problem that I was having, and I called them up, and they got me on the phone, and they were like giving me technical support for the HX stomp or the HX effects, and like, I could have waited on the phone for hours if I actually had called Helix, right, or Line 6.
Right.
So so yeah, no, it was great. It was just great service, really great, and great people. Just like you said, they're passionate about what they do. They're really nice, and just happy to talk to you.
It's funny. A great story Richie Faulkner, a lovely guy, the Judas Priest guitar player.
Yeah.
I was here one time doing a Marshall thing, and he was doing a masterclass in the studio with a vocalist, and they sort of said, hey, like, why don't you go and say hey to Rich? And I ended up getting involved with the masterclass, which was a lot of fun. But we had lunch together, and I'll never forget this. Richie said to me, he said, Nick, you don't work for Sweetwater. So he said, so I'm going to ask you a question because I know you'll give me a straight answer. I said, sure. What is it? He goes, are they putting drugs in the coffee here? I said, why'd you ask that? He said, he goes, the people who work here are too damned happy. You just don't see that anymore. And that's part of the why I like coming here, because everyone's actually, they have a spring in their step, yada yada. And one of my favorite quotes was from, I was talking to the head of HR one day, and he was on his way to one of these national HR like seminars or whatever, and we were talking about it. He said, what? He goes, there's one question that you always get asked as a human resources person. He goes, and when they ask me, no one likes my answer. I said, okay, what's the question? And he said, the question is, how do you deal with difficult employees? I said, okay, so what's the answer? He goes, it's really simple. I don't hire them. So, you know, like there's a vet, like, you know, as Dave said earlier, there's a vetting process. There's a Sweetwater University, and a lot of people don't make it as far as that, but then you've got to go through 13 weeks and pass at the end. It's like getting a degree because they don't want you on the phone until you know hopefully more than the person calling you up. Unless, of course, that person might be Dave Friedman, in which case you won't. But like for the most part, and that's, you know, that's one of the things, like, to me, God, I've become a Sweetwater spokesman, but like, to me, a brand is a promise. Like Friedman Amps has a promise, great tone. And the day that promise is broken, it's done. Which is why I think, you know, I remember my dad, may he rest in peace, used to love going to Home Depot. This is like 30 years ago, because every aisle had someone like him who was an expert. And he would just go in and he'd bullshit with people about plumbing. He would find problems with my house just so he can go and talk to people at Home Depot. Then Home Depot realized that they were paying these people too much money, and they got idiots who don't know the difference between a C-bend and a whatever, and they broke their promise. And the one thing I like about Sweetwater is their intention is to never break the promise, which is customer service.
Yeah, yeah.
So how if anything has it changed since the sale?
Oh yeah, which is I figured that question would come up. The great thing is, like, you know, Chuck is still on the board of directors, and the gentleman who took over, you know, who took his seat, John Hopkins, is one of the coolest. He's been with Chuck forever, and they basically think the same. So the credo remains intact. It's still always do the right thing. So to be honest with you, I haven't noticed anything apart from the fact I don't see Chuck anything like as often, which is a shame, because I really like the guy, because I enjoy his passion. But John has that same passion. Like John's into music. You know, John's wife is an extremely talented keyboard player and also a teacher, and he has that, you know, that's part of his DNA. So he was one of the first few people to be with Chuck. So, you know, he's taking the baton and is running with it, and, you know, Chuck's still at his shoulder. So I haven't noticed a darn thing.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah,
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, I haven't noticed a change in service or anything. By the way, I know that sometimes when we talk about Sweetwater, or we're promoting Sweetwater, there's always going to be folks who are like, what about, you know, the small shops? Support the small shops. And I will say, support your local shops too. You know?
Oh yeah, I'm a total. If you've got a local store that is giving you the service you want, God bless them. Keep them going. I've got great friends who work with local stores, and it's like I'm convinced that a great local store, because Sweetwater is not cheaper than anybody else at all. Right. So it's an even playing field on that regard. So, like 2-day shipping, if you've got a local guy, it's no day shipping. Go pick it up. And if the guy will look after you, or if he or she will look after you, God bless them. And, you know, I've always maintained that, you know, like a great deli will never go out of business, but a crappy one will. And the reason a lot of small music stores have gone under, unfortunately, is because the business acumen of the folk running them. And I'm talking about friends of mine too. But the band didn't work, I'm going to open a music store. But they can't do books. Does that make sense? Like,
no, you have to know how to run a business. I mean,
you have to have a business acumen and also look after your consumer. It's not a glamorous gig.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the same as running a studio or starting an amp company. If you don't do it right, you're dead in the water after a year or so.
It's true. So yeah, I mean, you know, I support local shops as well, but love Sweetwater because of the great service and the selection, and just, you know, and of course they're great sponsors of our show. So let's see.
I mean, I actually use Sweetwater to buy some things sometimes for rigs and stuff that I have to acquire for people.
Cool.
And it's so simple for me because I literally just email Robert Williams. I need this, and this. And as long as they're all in stock, well, I already checked they're in stock.
Right.
And pretty much, please ship to the normal address.
Yeah.
And about 5 minutes later, you see the whole invoice done, charged, and it's already in process of shipping.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. I write my guy Randy, send him an email. I'm like, it was like with the Eventide H90.
Right.
Even before it came out, I said, Randy, you know me. I need this. Please put one aside for me. And it was great.
Yeah, one of the things I love about Sweetwater too is like we have a lot of artist clientele, and the reason they come here and is because of this, because they need someone they can rely on, especially if you're on the road, yeah. There can't be any sorry we missed the hotel.
Yeah,
right.
That's what it comes down to. It's a moving target.
Yeah.
And if you miss that target, it's a friggin' nightmare, because I'm not saying that UPS and FedEx, but have you ever had UPS or FedEx try and follow a moving target?
Oh, it's impossible.
It doesn't happen. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you do your due when you're shipping something to someone on the road. You do your due diligence, and to make sure you have it, I always try to make sure it's there the day before.
Right.
Because it just in case. And then if they're off a day or it got delayed a day, it'll be delivered on the day it actually needs to be there. But you have to be very careful of that.
Yeah, and you've also got to be, and you've also got to apply due diligence. And I know this from own personal experience. If you're shipping to a hotel the day before someone arrives there, you've got to have the common sense to call the hotel and say, hey, this is coming for this person, but they might not be checking in under this name, so please hold it. Yeah. Like making sure it's to a tour manager as opposed to Saul Hudson, for example, because Saul Hudson will not be checking into that hotel. Les's Moore might, but not Saul Hudson. So yeah, like you've got to do once again, it's doing the right thing.
Yeah. That makes sense. Didn't you have it's when you were bringing up Richie Faulkner, Dave? Didn't you have an amp that just like made it like just at the very last minute with Richie when you sent it to him when he was, I forget.
No. Richie has a bunch of my amps though.
I know. I thought there was something with shipping or something.
No, that was with Jake.
Oh, was it with Jake? Okay.
Yeah. It somehow when they shipped it, they missed the driver that took it from our shop to FedEx just missed the window of the pickup at FedEx like by a hair. And then, then it was supposed to arrive there on a Saturday and it didn't arrive there till a Monday or something.
Oh, that's right. I remember that.
It was supposed to arrive on a Friday. And because of that, it didn't arrive till Monday. And they had already rehearsed and literally their very last rehearsal, he plugged it in and he's like, oh shit, I'm taking this.
That's a pretty good endorsement, right?
This is it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd keep this one. Nice.
By the way, I mentioned Richie Faulkner. Did you guys happen to see the HBO Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
No,
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, it was cool. It was Judas Priest, got in. Yeah. So when they performed, it was cool to see KK on the same stage.
Right? And Glenn was there too.
And Glenn was there, and and Richie was there. They were all playing. Sounded good. They did good. And at the very end, it was surreal to watch Rob Halford up on stage with Dolly Parton singing Jolene. I'm like, Rob Halford is like doing a duet with Dolly Parton on Jolene. I'm like, this is what the fuck am I watching?
Weird as it gets.
Yeah, this is as weird as it gets. Yeah.
Right. But the thing that impresses, I went to see them about 2 weeks before, like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame thing, and it's all a shame. I was going to say Freudian slip there.
Yeah.
And like they've got that Mr. Halford's in his 70s, and he had a head cold when I saw him. he still hits notes that people half his age can't hit. He's this freak of nature. He's almost like Glenn Hughes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like,
He can still sing great. Yeah.
he sings great, and he's just a really. I got to spend some quality time with him afterwards, and he's just a thoroughly nice freaking human being. He doesn't have his ego's not out of control. He just loves what he does. He's the metal god, and he's thankful for what he does. It's like there's no, don't you know who I am? It's like, hey, this is the fact I'm still doing this is remarkable. I love it. And that's what makes them such a great band. It's such a shame about Glenn and the Parkinson thing, because there's a huge talent, and once again another lovely man.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they're still carrying the flame.
Yeah, their last album, I'm looking forward to the next album, quite honestly, because
their last album was great.
Yeah, Firepower was fantastic. That album was just kick ass.
Yeah, and they, I love the fact that they got they got the Defenders of the Faith, what's it, Tom Allen and Andy Sneap did the production.
Yeah.
And now, of course, Andy's playing in the band as well. So
right. Although he almost didn't. Like he stepped away, he stepped aside and said he wasn't gonna. They were gonna tour with just Richie, and then for some reason he stepped back in, and now, they're doing it again.
I couldn't imagine, like, as good as Richie Faulkner is, a band like Judas Priest have to have two guitar.
They got to have two guitar players. Yeah, exactly.
You can't do that stuff with the harmonizer. It's not. Like
agreed. It wouldn't sound. It would. Yeah, it would be weird.
Beginning of Electric Eye wouldn't be the same.
Yeah, and a lot of the stuff is there are some subtle chord inversions and whatnot that you need two guitar players for.
Mm-hmm. Plus, it's just so cool when you have two guitar players like Judas Priest.
There's such a wall of sound.
Yeah. Modern Vintage, Nick and Dave. Is there a downside to little to no sag for more gainy amps like Wizards versus more sag like Marshall? Pros and cons for both designs. Thanks, Modern Vintage.
The pros and cons. The thing that I love about guitar, be it tone or the way a guitar plays or your likes and dislikes with regards amps or pedals, is it's a very, very personal thing. So what works for your best friend might not work for you, and vice versa. Mm-hmm. So I know people who can get amazing sounds out of like very stiff amps, and vice versa out of the like sagging. It depends what your end result is, and how hard you're pushing the amp. Because I'm sure Dave will agree with me that there are certain amps that sag, but you've got to push them really hard to get them to the level of sag. Like a lot of people go, I'm not using that amp because it sags, but it's like you're never going to play it loud enough to make it do that.
Yeah, I mean, like even any old Marshall isn't sagging until you're getting it up quite a lot in volume.
Yeah, you've got to be.
There's almost no actual voltage sag.
Yeah.
A super lead amp on 10. Yes, that's definitely sagging.
Oh yeah.
In a good way.
Yeah.
Wizard. I mean, there's. Sometimes you can, how do I want to say it? Sometimes you can think something's saggy when in reality it's just an amp that has a lot more bass in the front end.
Right.
And is leaned out and tight. So the interesting thing that I've always shot for is a tight sounding amp that has a little give and feel to it.
Yeah.
Because especially at lower volumes, it has its benefits,
No, absolutely, and to me the like a player's relationship with an amp should be symbiotic.
Yeah,
as much as if it's not just what it's. There are certain amps out there that I've heard people play and go, God, I want to play that, and then you plug into it and it's too stiff. There's no give. And while it works for that guy, it doesn't work for me. Once again, it's just a personal thing.
Yeah.
Like, my personal taste or lack thereof. Like if an amp feels right to me, then I'll play better than I would play to an amp through an amp that doesn't feel right.
Sure.
And that's part of the whole tone chasing thing that we're all stuck with.
Yeah, that's the intangible Really, it's an intangible because it's up to the individual person and how they feel playing it, right?
Yeah. And it's also down to like how that person plays, like how hard are they hitting the strings? How hard are they picking?
Mm-hmm.
Right. There are certain players who can get things out of an amplifier because of the way because of how hard they pick, and vice versa. Like, you know, I remember I had the great pleasure of spending several hours with Billy Gibbons after he played Fort Wayne recently. And he's tuned down to E flat and he's using 7-gauge strings, for the love of God. And he sounds freaking huge. But Tony Iommi's been doing that for decades too, because of his plastic fingers and using banjo strings before light strings existed. And there's something that, you know, I was always of the school that the higher the action and the heavier the strings, the better the sound. And I've been taught that that's not correct by other people who were doing the exact opposite of that and who sound amazing.
Yeah.
And then you'll get someone like Gary Moore, may he rest in peace, that would use the heaviest goddamn string, and Malcolm Young for that matter, who would beat the crap out of the guitar and play with the high action and heavy strings. And it sounded amazing because some people like to fight the guitar.
Right.
I do to a degree too. I don't like the action being too low because I hit hard and I like to have some resistance. I like to be fighting it.
If I wasn't going to solo, if it was just all chord and rhythm work, I would use heavier gauge strings.
Right.
But it's when it comes to, you know, doing any solo work, that's where I my wrists are too weak, so I need to use at least 9s, or maximum 9s. Really, I don't like to go up to 10s. But yeah, I agree with you. It's interesting. So everybody has their own thing, right? So, but like, you know, Dave, you were saying in some other shows about Edward would play, and he had slightly higher action, but then as he got older, the action got lower and lower.
Yeah, this is true. You know, it's all a. Oh, well, I made an interesting observation when I was playing one of some of the earlier Wolfgang guitars had small frets.
Right. Yes, they did.
And you know, it kind of dawned on me one day. Here's a guy that's using 9-gauge strings tuned to E flat.
Yep.
And it kind of dawned on me one day. He goes, this makes a lot of sense why it's small frets. Because you're not going to bend it out of tune. You're not going to, you know, grip it too hard and bend it differently. It makes a lot of sense. It, you know, kind of, you know, if you put 6100s on it with 9s at E flat, I mean, if you're a good player, you won't bend it out of tune, but you know, you could potentially easily bend it out of tune.
Oh no, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. There was someone was talking about the fact that it's really hard to play along with Iron Man, the original Iron Man recording by Black Sabbath. And on an SG, like if you press too hard, you can make a considerable. You can go sharp.
Right.
Well, even on an SG, if you just pull on the neck a little bit too hard,
yeah, you can pull it back. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's true.
And then of course you like you get the scallop neck guys, you know, like the Ingves and the Blackmore had his neck scallop from 12 up, I believe, if memory serves me correctly. And you would never know because of their
touch
and their ears, you know.
Yeah, that's amazing to really be able to, you know, watching Malmsteen doing all of that on scallop frets is pretty crazy.
Yeah, and then you get someone like Jeff Beck, and the stuff he does with like an unlocked tremolo system or whammy system is not human.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, his ear is crazy, right?
Yeah, unbelievable. He's one of those guys where you watch him, and I've gone to watch Jeff and walked away going, I have no clue how he did that. Like sometimes you can go, okay, yeah, that's 20 hours of practice a day for 20 years, but pitch like that, no, I don't. That's something else. That's not muscle memory. That's some sort of. That's something supernatural, in my opinion.
Yeah, he's I haven't watched it in a while, but I love watching the Ronnie Scott.
Oh, it's petrifying.
Yeah. Yeah, just amazing. All right, we definitely have to get. I saw this. We have to get some Dimebag stories from you, Nick.
I missed the late great Dimebag. Yeah, yeah. I first met Darrell in, I think it was '85. I can't remember if they opened for Grim Reaper or not, but he actually gave me the Projects in the Jungle cassette, and I still have the one he gave me. And then you fast forward like 5 years, and he's now managed by Concrete Management, who were my management. And we kind of became friends, but what solidified it was, and this shows you how long ago this was. This would have been 93 maybe, and this was before cell phones were really that common. So I was doing some Marshall thing. I was doing a Marshall thing in Florida, I think, and the reception at the hotel said, "Can you call a guy called Brad Dolinsky, who was the editor of Guitar World?" So I called up Brad from a payphone. Remember those things you had to put quarters in and stuff?
Yeah.
And he said, "Hey Nick, I know you've worked with some up and coming guitar players." He goes, "We've just got Eric Johnson and Kirk Hammett to do columns for us, 6 columns, and we want to get someone who's up and coming. Is there anyone you would like to suggest? Because we'd like you to work with them on it." And my response was immediately, and this was before he was Dimebag, I said, "It's got to be Diamond Darrell." Because the guy is, I'd done a Guitar World lesson with him on that first tour they did with Suicidal Tendencies and Exodus. And the guy blew my doors off with his dexterity and his accuracy. And then, so long story short, that became a thing that ended up being a book in the end, because after 6 months, his column was so popular, as was Kirk Hammett's, that they both carried on. So I got to work. My job my job, if you can call it that, because it was just a privilege and an honor for me, was I was basically I was the engineer on his column. Does that make sense? I was I was pressing record. So we discuss each column maybe 3 or 4 times. So it was like taking the best, just like doing 3 takes of a solo, then comping it.
Mm-hmm.
So we would do 3 or 4 discussions on it. Then I would take the parts I thought were most relevant and would fit into the 600 words. Then I'd send it to him, and he would literally dot every I and cross every T, because he had his own way of speaking. They coined it dimebonics. And he was such a nice human being. He was a wild man. In a good way, Guitar World would, and I don't mind saying this because, I think they eventually sussed it out. So my job with him would involve 3 or 4 times a year. We would get together either backstage on a tour bus in a hotel room, or they'd fly me out to his place in Arlington, Texas, and we would do stuff. We'd collate the next lot of stuff for the next column. And a lot of times when I went to Texas, he was like, "How long are you here for?" "Good. Tell me what you want to do." He'd write it down and said, "Okay, I'll FedEx you a video because we're going out." So I'd go out for an interview that never took place. And then people go, "How come you've got this so damned accurate?" It's like, because Dime would send me videos going, "This is what I do, Hitch." He called me Hitchcock when I shaved my head. And he would just walk me through the, we actually put a couple out called the Lost Lessons. He would just sit there with the videotape and go, "This is what I'm doing here, 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 and here." Mm-hmm. And good Dimebag stories. There's hundreds of them. You had to experience the man, if that's not too silly of a thing. He had a gift of making you feel like you were the only person in the room. You could be in a crowded backstage area, and when he talked to you, it was like everyone else disappeared, because he gave you 110% focus. Mm-hmm. He was funny as hell, politically incorrect, drank a lot. I would often joke that I drank enough with him to kill several small countries.
Yeah, the stories. I have several friends that I remember. Mike Tempesta.
Oh, I love Tempesta. Yeah, we were talking.
Whose band at the time was on tour with Pantera.
Yeah, Powerman. I was talking to Mike the other day. Powerman 5000. I have the disc on the wall behind me.
I remember because I did his rigs and stuff then, and I remember him coming back from that tour, and he's like, oh, I think I've lost a few years of my life on that one.
Yeah,
there was just so much drinking.
I remember after the tour managers, after all they sussed it, they whenever they came through New York on a press junket, Darrell would always insist I was the last interview, which basically meant you're coming out with me and I'm going to obliterate you. And there was there was a fun, and it was fun. It wasn't peer pressure. You just got sucked into. You just went, okay, this is you. You weren't being forced into anything. It was done happily. Mm-hmm. I remember once I went with him, and there was a famous. I think Howard Stern made it quite famous. There's a gentleman's club in New York called Scores.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think some guy punched Claude Van Damme out there and became famous, but it was the High Flyers Gentlemen's Club, and I went there with after I did the last interview on one thing, and then 8 hours later we're in this damn club, and it's shot, and I was so hammered I couldn't get up in time to bath, so I threw up in my bag which had my cassette players in.
Oh, God.
And Darrell just goes, "Good shot. Same again, please." And so it continued. That was the life. And I miss him dreadfully because he was a genuinely nice human being. Mm. I remember my favorite Dime story of the many was, if you knew Dime well, and I'm sure Mike probably told you this as well, Dave, is that if you knew Darrell well, he would call you at like 4 a.m, not because he was just getting up, but because he was still up. In fact, I'll tell you 2 stories. There's a famous solo, the end of Floods on the Great Southern Trendkill, like his outro solo, Over the Rain, with the police chord. I was actually working on the cover story for Guitar World, and I was very nocturnal, so I was working on it like 4 a.m, and this was before digital record. So I got this piece of crap like answer machine on my landline phone. And the phone went, I just let it go to voicemail, and the voice would come through the phone because you were hearing it through the speakers on the machine. And it was like one of those surreal moments where it's like, hold on a second, that's the voice I'm listening to on the cassette. And it was Darrell. He's like, Hitch, pick up the goddamn phone. So I pick it up. I go, what's up, brother? He goes, we're mastering the record. I recorded the end of this song, Floods, and I'd had a few too many cocktails, and the guitar was slightly out of the intonation was out, so it's a bit sour on the upper end. Is there any way you can get me a Korg G3 and a Les Paul to Sterling Sound Studios in the morning? I said, well, can you get a run to 48th Street? He went, yeah, of course we can. Yeah, it's Electra will do that. I said, well, I can't make any promises, but as soon as it's 7 o'clock, I'll call my buddy Steve Pisani, who works at Sam Ash at the time. Tell me how you want the guitar tuned, like humbuckers Les Paul. He said, it's got to be Les Paul. Said, give me string gauges and tuning, and I'll see what he can do. And sure enough, Steve got it. I called Steve at 7. He went, yeah, for Dimebag, absolutely, I'll do it. He got the guitar set up, got the Korg G3, which I got Darrell to endorse, and because I'd written some programs on it. And he actually recorded that outro in the mastering studio. And apparently the Electra guy was going, this is not the way we do things at Electra. He was like, tough shit, this is how we do things in Pantera. Had a couple of shots, and the second take was the one that's now one of the revered things. But my favorite of all of those calls, and I've got a CD somewhere of the calls, and my wife would be like, your goddamn friend Darrell again. So we let it go to voicemail. But there was one time he called up and he went, Hitch, the brothers met the brothers. And I went to my wife, I've got to take this call, because I knew what it meant. It meant that Vinny and Dime had met Eddie and Alex, who were their heroes. So he told me it was like a great 40-minute conversation. He was like, little kid, he's going to do it with blah, 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 this. And I got to see Ed. And this was the time when can you remember the Charvel did the art collection, the limited edition run? He went, Hitcher, he goes, I got a question for you. He said, if you could get one of those, which one would you get? I said, well, they don't make a lefty, but if I could get one, it would have to be the black and white one.
Yeah.
Because I can tell you exactly where I was when I heard that first record, especially Eruption. He said, well, for me, it's the same deal, but it's the black and yellow one. Because Van Halen 2 was his gateway to Edward.
Mm.
He said, you know what I did? Is because I'm sure you know Matt Bruck.
Yeah.
Dave, yeah. So he watched, like Vinny and Dime were guests of Edward and Alex, and they watched from Matt Bruck's. Matt was Ed's right hand guy and also his guitar tech at the time. So they watched from the tech station. He said, you know what I did? He goes, I went to Matt and I said, look, Matt, I know they're sold out, but if a black and yellow one becomes available from the EVH Art Series, he said, I don't care what it costs. Could you please put me on the list? I don't want to usurp anybody. I don't want to be bumped in the list. But if one becomes available and it lines up with my name, I don't care if it's 50 grand. I'd love to get one. And he said, Matt said, oh, I'll see what I can do. He said, I thought nothing more of it than backstage after the show. Apparently, Ed went, Darrell, come over here. He goes, yeah, what is it, Ed? He goes, I understand you would like a black and yellow art series. And he went, yeah, but I don't want to take one from someone who's already pre-ordered, but if one becomes available and there's no one ahead of me on the list, I'd love to get one. And Ed said, you can have one, but there's one condition. Well, there's two conditions. Number one, you're not paying for it. And number two, I stripe it for you personally. And I went, you're shitting me. And he goes, no. He goes, Ed wants me to go to his house and he'll stripe it for me personally. And of course, a few months later, that was not possible because of what happened. So at Dime's funeral, Ed turned up with the original black and yellow one and put it in the coffin.
Mm.
Yeah.
So it's actually buried with, I remember writing that story. It was called The Brothers Meet the Brothers. And then I sent it in, and then I actually called Brad Polinsky, the editor of Guitar World, and Nicole Sweat, going, I don't think we should run this. I didn't want to be responsible for some idiot pick, God forbid, grave robbing. He said, it's already out there. Yeah. So we ran it. But yeah, that was one of my, I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that particular conversation, because that's why he was so great, in my humble opinion, is that he was the biggest fan on the planet.
Right.
He was a huge fan. So if they were playing with Kiss, he wouldn't watch from side stage. He'd be at the front with the kids. That was just Darrell.
Yeah. Yeah. He'd probably have his face painted.
Oh, no, he did.
That's funny. Scott C says, Nick, love how you to play the love the how to play series of vids on Sweetwater. When are you going to do some Grim Reaper songs?
When hell freezes it? No. I've actually had a lot of people, especially unfortunately, Steve Grimmett, the singer, passed recently. So I actually got to go out to they flew me out to a festival in Germany that he was going to headline the night before the show, and I got to play with his band. We played all. I'm probably going to do something, but I want to be reverent to Steve about it. And right now, it doesn't feel right. But a lot of people ask me, "How do you play See You in Hell?" And it's really hard because it's EDCB. But hey. But there is a wrinkle that very few people suss out, and it is something I stole from Thin Lizzy. Because I'm be an artful thief, they said, and I stole an idea from I found a way of playing the intro chord to Jailbreak on one guitar, and then I used that in as many songs as I could, which was pretty much every goddamn song. So,
well, once you get the trick, why not, right?
Yeah. Once you get it, that was what Jay Younger called it the Reaper chord. Well, it was actually two chords, but yeah, but you can do it with a bass player as well. So it's just making a minor 7 out of a regular chord. But you could, if you're smart, you can do it. So yeah, one of these days, when I feel it's right, I will do so. But thanks for asking. I appreciate it. I'm still staggered that if someone had told me in 1983 that some song you and Steve wrote in like 20 minutes would be talked about nearly 40 years later, I'd have probably driven you to rehab myself. But that was one of the great things about it was really good for Steve's wife Millie, but like we played this festival, probably 3,000 people watched us, and most of them were born after the band had disbanded, and they knew every damn word, that's really humbling. But he was an exceptional singer. He was up there with Mr. Halford and Mr. Dio, in my opinion. In fact, why he didn't get the gig when Bruce Dickinson left Iron Maiden, I'll never know, but it's all good.
Yeah. Modern Vintage, thank you. Dave, what is so special about Kerry Wright cabs? Are the tributes close? I've never heard of Kerry Wright cabs.
Kerry Wright was a personal friend of mine. Fortunately, he passed away not too long ago of a heart attack.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, sorry.
Kerry was a wonderful guy that was a crazy craftsman. Like he did a lot of vintage restoration and re-Tolexing of vintage amps and Marshalls and Voxes, and like he had all the old Tolex and the old cloth and the proper things to do it. He did a bunch of work for Lenny Kravitz on his back lines, and he did stuff for Edward Van Halen, and did stuff for I had him do some things for people. Kerry made some cabinets, some different cabinets. He used to make some cabinets for Dumble. So there was some like open back or round oval ported back cabinets and stuff that he had done. He used to make 4x12s. What is so different, or what is it's not that it's that different. It's just that he was a craftsman when he made it. So he didn't use even tongue and groove. He did dowels.
Really?
Joints. Yeah. Actually doweled jointed woodwork. So that was a little different.
Yeah, it is.
And he hated making those cabinets for people.
I bet he did.
Because he did them all himself, Right. And he hated making those cabs, and he just said, he goes, you know what? I just keep raising the price, and they just keep buying them. And it's very expensive. They were, it was like for an empty 4x12. I think at one point in time it was like $1,100 or $1,200.
Empty. Wow.
Empty. Yeah. Oh, it might have even gone up after that. I don't know what his. I hadn't seen him for a few years when he died, so I'm not sure what he was up to. The tribute cabs. So he was. I think what you're talking about with the tribute cabs is there's a woodworker guy. He was sharing a shop with another woodworking company, and they were helping him make some of the cabinets and stuff. And I think the tributes. I think maybe vintage LA Vintage Gear in Los Angeles, I think, bought the rights to the name. And I think that person is making stuff exclusively for them in the same fashion, same way.
Right.
So what's that special? I mean, it's not necessarily that special. It was made like an old cab. It was made of, Baltic birch wood, and and some of his designs were original designs with a certain kind of port or something that he did. So that is his own tuned thing that he did. So that's the best I can answer.
Sounds like an artisan. Sounds like a craftsman.
Yeah.
Which there are sadly that seems to be. I hope I'm wrong, but that seems to be a dying breed.
And you also said here, will NAMM 2023 be a major industry event again? I don't know if NAMM will ever again be what it once was. That's my thinking.
It
was becoming, before the pandemic, an antiquated sort of idea. It used to be like all the dealers would fly out and go see the latest stuff. Well, the internet's kind of taken that, taken over that. You see the latest stuff all the time immediately.
Yep.
and and then it just becomes a event that people are just going to that are not dealers, and it's not about sales. And it costs all the manufacturers a huge amount of money, and that money could probably be better spent in marketing or videos and things.
No, I'm on your side on that front.
I mean, did I like it? Did I have fun? Sure. But I don't think we're going to see it come back. Now, I think smaller shows could be very successful, like if Sweetwater will ever do the actual show again, I think that would be very successful and things like that. And some other guitar shows might be successful. But yeah, it's a different world now.
Yeah, the world's changed. Like you said, like the 20% to do 80% of your business, speaking from the manufacturing side, this has been going on for God knows how long now. They've already made their orders prior to the NAMM show.
Yeah.
And like you said, was it a great social event? I loved the NAMM show.
Sure, I did too.
But it ceased to, and like once me showing my age, I remember when I first went to the NAMM show as a manufacturer as opposed to a demonstrator. The first one I went with Marshall as part of the team. There would be a meeting every night telling you how many hundreds of thousands of dollars of sales were made that day.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden this thing called the internet happened, and that stopped. People don't buy at the show anymore. And there were an increasing number of artists going to the show.
Yeah.
Right.
We didn't have a record label, but had a badge that said artist.
Yeah.
I've got a Facebook page. Cool. Here, have an artist badge. What? That's cynical, maybe, but I ended up, like my last few years at Marshall, I actually had a card that didn't have my phone number or my email on it because a lot of the artists didn't even have a booking agent. It's like, yeah, I've got a CD burner too. That doesn't make me a signed artist. Sorry.
Yeah.
Right.
Garage band and a CD burner. Hey, and a Facebook page. Or back then, what was the MySpace or whatever it was called?
Right.
In fact, a friend of mine who works the industry created a completely false band just to see how many followers he could get, and he got tens of thousands. And the band was freaking comical.
Oh my God.
Vaporware, but hey.
Rob's Tone Zone. Nick, See You in Hell Still Rocks. What would you say is the coolest gig you've ever played?
The coolest gig I've ever played. The answer the sound, at the risk of being flippant, pretty much every gig ever, there's something special about playing. Mm-hmm. But if you ask, the one that sticks in my mind would probably be we were asked to play the Texas Jam in 1985, which was at the Cotton Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, it was a band called Victory. Then it was us. Then it was an unknown act called Bon Jovi. Don't know what happened to them. Mm. Then there was this dude called Ted Nugent. And then I think it was Night Ranger and Deep Purple.
Wow.
With Blackmore. But anyway, long story short, so we got there the day before, and our management were like, I'm like, I want to be at the venue at like 8 a.m. He goes, no. He goes, you're going to freak out. He goes, the biggest show you've played is like 7,000 people. You'll play to around 70,000 people. If you're there too long, I don't want you second guessing yourself. So they had us run late. Well, not run late, but they want us to arrive half an hour before we went on. So that was the plan. It bothered me greatly. They had the record label sent a limo out. We're driving through and I'm sure Dave knows. I'm sure you've been to the Dallas Guitar Show many times. It was
actually I haven't ever.
Oh, you haven't? Okay, so there's some pretty, for want of the technical word, shitty neighborhoods right around the area, and this limo driver gets us lost in this really bad area, and you can kind of. It's on the radio that Victory's got 3 songs, and I'm just going, this is the biggest piece of bullshit ever. And then we pass a police station, and my manager says, hold on a sec, I'm going to ask for directions. So he gets out of the car, and I just went, sorry guys, I have to do this. I ran in after him, and he was talking to this Texas sheriff behind the desk, I said, look, I hate to interrupt. I said, my name is Nick. I'm from this small town in England. We put this band together 10 years ago. This is the biggest moment of my life, and we're in severe danger of missing it because we've got 15 minutes to get there, get changed, and get on the stage. Our gear's there already. Forget directions. Can you take us there? And it was like something out of the Dukes of Hazzard. The guy's like, hell yeah, we'll give you an escort. So we actually got a police escort to the show. And the cop loved it. Siren on, broke all the speed limits. We just followed him, and we literally got there in time to change and get on stage. And if I hadn't have done that, we might have missed that show. And those they won't even give you 2 minutes to be late. If you're not there, you're done.
Wow.
And then to add to it, someone got married on stage right after we played See You in Hell. So, and that made the Dallas papers the next day. So yeah, that's probably my most memorable gig, if truth be told.
That's cool.
That's a good story.
That's a good one. Is a 1987X a real or good plexi circuit, Dave?
Well, it's a real plexi circuit. Whether it's it's kind of had some different specs over the years. What it is, I mean, it's close to being just perfect, but a couple little tweaks and it would be perfect. At least that's my opinion.
Very, very well put, sir. Very well put.
I mean, it is one version of a plexi circuit, but there's many versions, so it may be not my ultimate version.
Yeah, one of the just to step in there too is that there was a guy. I don't know if he's still at Marshall, but there was a guy called Phil Wells. Because what a lot of people don't get is the fact that in the early days of Marshall, in fact, the early days of any amp company around that time, number one, they were making amps on a catch can basis, Jim would call it. So if the parts weren't available, you got the next closest thing. And then you add that to the fact that Jim would always list, if Hendrix wanted an amp with more treble and less of this or whatever, they would tweak it accordingly and just put it in. So they were experimenting with the circuit. And then you had component tolerances as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then transformers. So you could end up with 3 or 4 amps made on the same day that were different because they might have changed the circuit, they might have tweaked the circuit, and or the component tolerances were slightly different. And you add all that up, and I'm sure Dave will testify to this, it doesn't take much to make an amp sound completely different, especially if you've got a plus or minus 15% tolerance on certain key components.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I remember doing the Kerry King 2203 that we actually Santiago worked on. That is that Kerry was very much like Zakk Wylde, is that he would find any 2203 that came up in the recycler in LA, he'd just buy it. If Zakk didn't beat him to the punch. So he had this huge collection of Marshalls, and there was one he called, like, he figured, like, he called this one the Beast, and everyone figured it was modified. So when I got him to agree to let us borrow it to see if we could make an exact replica as a limited edition signature model, it went back to Marshall. And it was actually a stock circuit, but the component tolerances were so out of whack, it sounded very different to pretty much everything else around it. And that's a commonplace story.
Yeah.
From my experience. And there was a guy at Marshall who was actually trying to document all of the changes over the years due to old amps coming in for service. I don't know how far that's got, but I'm sure you've seen Doyle's book, and he went into great detail on the number of plexi fluctuations, and it's all over the place. And the 87X is part of that.
Yeah.
Dave, will your plexi have a power soak built in?
No, well, you'll have to wait and see.
I'm looking forward to that, by the way. With or without a power soak?
Let's see. Dave, for pedal board connections, what specific Mogami model cable to use, as there is more than one that you recommend?
I use 2314, like a very thin version. 2314, I think that's it. 2413, one of those two. 2314, I think.
Okay.
What is the reason you go thinner, by the way, Dave? Is it a tonal thing or
No, just the pedal board connections. It's just easier to work with. You
Right.
don't getting between things, and also I use mostly square plugs these days, which are this plug that a guy from France came up with, which is it's perfectly fits that cable. So
perfect? Cool.
Let's see. Why isn't this? Oh, Nick Bowcott. Do you have a favorite Friedman amp?
That's a good one. I really like the pink. No, I really like the pink taco's great, but the BE100, that's just a wonderful amp. It's a beast. Like you put that on the stage. If you're not very good, you probably don't want to use a BE100 because people will hear you. And you might get fired. You'll sound great, but if you're it's a great sounding amp, but it will find your, like any really good amp, it will give you a unique place in the sonic tapestry of your band, and people will hear you.
Yeah,
I love the BE100. It feels right, and you can literally feel it as well without it being loud. It moves your internal organs in a desirable way. In my humble opinion.
I love that.
And also, and the other one I've got to mention too is the JJ as well. Jesus Christ!
Yeah, Jerry.
What an! I remember going to. I remember I was doing the Volga display of power piece for Guitar World back in the day, because that my whole thing was I used to love the old guitar magazines, because I didn't just want to know what people used. I wanted to know the order, like which is first. Is the wah, then the OD. I wanted to know from pick through speakers the exact chain, and so that's why Volga displayer of power came to be. And at the time, I guess he was using prototypes that became the JJ, because he got one of your amps that said angry on it, and the other one just said pissed.
Yeah.
And it was like, so he got angry and pissed, and I did the rig rundown with him and his tech, and then I was with one of the Def Leppard techs, and we were listening to the sound check, and he turned to me and he said, "Are you hearing what I'm hearing?" I said, "If you're hearing one of the best guitar tones you've ever heard in your life, yes." And he went, "Yeah, that's what I'm hearing."
That's awesome.
No, but that's just it's just one. I love, like, Jerry Cantrell is like once again, and we were talking about Jakey. Jerry Cantrell's contribution to rock or metal, whatever you want to call it, is freaking gargantuan.
Sure.
And it's not just his riffs, his musicality, but his tone. God damn.
Yeah, his tone is fantastic.
That man has tone for days, and the fact he's got his things, I've got a couple of my pupils have bought the mini JJ. Freaking great little amp, man.
Oh yeah, killer amp.
Yep.
Well, I know Dave's got to run. You got to go to dinner, and but Nick, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. It's great to have you on, and just being a representative, of course, for Sweetwater, who, we have an affiliate link, guys. If you want to purchase anything, it is Black Friday, actually, still.
Yep, still.
Yeah. So if you want to use our link for any Black Friday sales or anything like that, please let us know. Well, you don't have to let us know. Just click the link. And just check out Sweetwater. They're a great place. And if you're interested in working there, I guess hit them up and send them your resume.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, do that. Actually, I just like to quickly say, for what my opinion is worth, which according to my wife is about 0, maybe negative, is I've just looked at my watch. The biggest compliment I can pay you two gentlemen is I've had so much fun doing this. I thought we were talking for like 20 minutes. It's like pretty much
almost 2 hours.
1 hour, 44 minutes later. So,
thank you.
Thank you for having me. I'm sorry that this might end up being your swan song show because of the stupid guest you've got, but I had a blast. Thank you so much.
Awesome,
thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate you coming on. Tell the guys, the rest of the people, Tyler and Josh and everybody over at Sweetwater, we say thank you as well. My computer's like acting strange for some reason. Okay. Well, anyway, our next show, let me see. What do I have lined up here? And then I'll let Dave run here. Oh, well, we don't have anybody scheduled just yet. So I'm going to be scheduling Dan at Rev with Sean Tubbs. They're going to be coming on soon. I know we're going to be having Mike Sullivan from Russian Circles. Right, Dave?
Yep.
You're going to be sending me the information.
Dave can get the guy he's having dinner with.
We've had him.
We did have Jake.
That was a very debaucherous show.
You'll have to check that one out. Check that one out. Nick.
It was really well, it was a 4-hour show, and it was really good up until
last hour.
It slowly was careening down a hill.
You'll have to check it out.
You feel my scotch and whatever else was in the room.
Yeah, there's that once again that fine line between clever and stupid.
Yeah, exactly.
Crossed.
Although people tell me to this day it's still their favorite show of all time.
Well, I bet. Yeah, there's nothing like it's like it was probably very Derek and Clive, if you know.
They like watching the train wreck.
Yeah,
and
a great train wreck though.
Yeah,
and no one died. So
exactly.
No one died. I think I got a few years taken off my life that day though.
Hey, it's worth it. I remember talking to Lynch about it. He goes, you know what? If this takes, they say takes this many hours. Once I'm 80, I don't want to live that long anyway. So it's all good.
79 is okay.
He was doing the math.
Well, everybody have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon. I'll be putting on the social media stuff when our next show is. It'll probably be in like 2 weeks or so. Right. All right. Have a good one.
Great night. Thanks for having me. And until our paths cross.
Yeah, thank you. Hang on while I say goodbye. I'm just going to hit the end of the broadcast, and we'll say goodbye offline.
Cool.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
See you.